It was the most optimistic CinemaCon I've ever been to. Even last year, that was the worst Q1 I think any of us had ever had. Minecraft ticket sales were going great through the week, which was the positive thing of last year's CinemaCon. But this year, it was really that the slates are back, big movies are back.
This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Daniel Loria, the editorial director of Boxoffice Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition. And in this week's episode, we speak with Alexander DelVecchio from Rutgers Cinema, going over the most anticipated titles for those younger audiences coming to a theater near you. Alex was with us at CinemaCon last week, so he reacts from the entire slate presentations in the perspective of what will appeal to younger viewers. That's the Gen Z viewers between the ages of 18 and 22. He's got a cinema and a college campus, and that is coming up on the second half of this episode. But before we get there, we are going over the latest news and highlights with my colleagues and co-hosts, Chad Kennerk and Rebecca Pahle from Boxoffice Pro. Chad, we missed you last week in Vegas. You were holding down the fort, but we'll see you there next year. It's a quick interlude.
Yeah, I only had slight FOMO.
You did get to go see Michael ahead of its release this weekend. We're going to be talking about it in detail in a second. What did you think of the movie?
I thought it was a massive success in that it fulfills exactly what a Michael Jackson biopic ought to do. It covers the span from the origins of the Jackson 5 through his bad world tour concert in London in 1988. So it covers a good swatch of time, and I think despite all the behind-the-scenes drama about the actual making of the film, I think it actually benefited it. Anton Fuqua managed to find a good story arc that made sense, that gives us some insight into what shaped Michael. And we haven't had an official PR announcement. I believe Lionsgate COO did mention in possibly a shareholder call that he referred to it as part one and said, it really feels like a part one. It does say at the end of the film, his story continues. So
they're dooning it, they're wicketing it.
I hope it's called Jackson and not Michael Part 2.
Yeah, I think that would be good. If you do Michael and then do Jack, that's a very good marketing think. I like that, Chad. I haven't seen it yet. Rebecca hasn't either. But Rebecca, you went and checked out Lee Cronin's The Mummy this last weekend.
I did. I actually saw two horror things over the past weekend. One was Lee Cronin's The Mummy, and the second was the Mets getting to an 11-game losing streak.
It's not like the Phillies are doing much better, so I'm not even talking smack right now. Or division, not doing great.
It's rough. Yeah. Both were rough. The Mummy, yeah. I was telling Chad before we started recording. There's a solid 90-minute movie in there. But it's just too much. It's basically an Evil Dead movie and also an Exorcist movie and also a police procedural.
Okay.
Which it didn't quite work for me. But we saw it in Dolby's. The sound was great. The Dolby Mandalorian and Grogu trailer that they ran was good. So yeah, it got me more excited to see more Dolby things than not so much to see Lee Cronin's fourth movie. Whatever it's called.
Understandable. Box office numbers last weekend, not very kind to Lee Cronin's The Mummy, as it opened below what we were expecting it to perform. I think it did around 12 to 13 million, if I'm not mistaken. All in all, it was a weekend really led by the third frame of the Super Mario Galaxy movie, which grossed $36 million in its third frame. Super Mario Galaxy already up to $356 million domestic and nearly $400 million worldwide. So a good start for that title. And this weekend, guys, it's all going to be Michael at the box office. Tracking for this has been all over the place. After a strong start in pre-sales, it kind of tailed off. We thought this was going to be fan-driven. And the forecasting I've got from our panel here is all over the place. I've got some areas in the country tracking this at around $50 million opening weekend range. Other areas are telling me, hey, my sales are suggesting something north of $80 million for opening weekend. So it's kind of hard to put a number here. Essentially, we're trying to get something in the middle. which would suggest an opening weekend between $65 and $70 million for Michael, with the potential for this to perform between $70 to $75 million. I can even see this beating that $80 million mark, but I think $70 million, that's your target for opening weekend, and it would make Michael the highest grossing opening weekend biopic for a music title, beating the 2015 release Straight Outta Compton, which opened to $60 million. And the big target comp here, if we can get there, is the $51 million opening weekend for Bohemian Rhapsody in 2018, which had a 4x domestic run, topping out at $216 million domestic. Right now, our total theatrical forecast for a title like Michael is between $180 to $200 million domestic. So that's more or less the sweet spot we're looking at. If it's a $60, $70 million opening weekend, that would put us on the 2.5 to 3x multiple once we get to the domestic run. And on the UK side, our UK opening weekend forecast provided to us by our colleagues over at Pearl and Dean has Michael opening between 8 to 10 million pounds, with a total theatrical run in the UK between 30 and 35 million pounds. This is going to be, I think, one of the inflection points in the calendar. We're expecting competitive grosses here. Obviously not something as big as what we saw with Project Hail Mary. But Chad, from what you're telling me, this has the opportunity to win people over after opening weekend. I think a lot of folks are waiting to see what the reaction is from the first set of audiences before making a decision.
This is why I think they did it right, in that it does focus on his performances. It feels at times like a concert movie. It feels like you're actually watching concert footage of Michael Jackson, because Jafar Jackson is really uncanny as his uncle.
I wonder if there's going to be a premium play. I know for Bohemian Rhapsody, the Live Aid did bonkers on ScreenX. Obviously, we're just getting into the summer movie season, so that panoramic premium footprint is going to be in high demand. But it would feel like a real shame to miss out on the opportunity, because I know there are a bunch of people who would love to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think premium formats are going to be maybe not a determining factor for this title, but a nice little addition.
You mentioned Dolby Atmos. I think that sort of technology is great.
This is very much a title you can enjoy on any
screen at a cinema. And I think it's going to be one for all ages. And to get that perspective from our colleagues in the industry, let's go over now to our feature segment, because we've got a lengthy conversation with Alexander DelVecchio from the Rutgers Cinema, going into every single title that he highlighted from those CinemaCon 2026 presentations, and some titles that didn't make it to the show, but that he still thinks are going to hit with your younger audiences. Alex's point of view is always super valuable for us here in the podcast, because as we know, that Gen Z crowd is super loyal to our industry. Now, without any further ado, after this commercial break, let's go with Alexander DelVecchio.
Imagine a world where your cinema's digital experience is as unforgettable as the movies you show. At Boxoffice, we strive to make that world a reality. We offer innovative solutions like custom-built websites, mobile apps, and user-friendly ticketing pages, crafted to meet the unique needs of cinemas. It's all about enhancing customer loyalty and making booking a breeze. Take your cinema's online experience to the next level with Boost. Contact us today at sales@boxoffice.com to learn more.
And we are back here on the Box Office podcast with our good friend and colleague in the industry, Alex DelVecchio from the Rutgers Cinema on campus at Rutgers University in New Jersey. Alex, welcome back here to the podcast.
Thanks so much. Great to be back, and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, we're going to be going over the entire CinemaCon presentations, highlights on your end as an exhibitor, because we love to test the waters in terms of what young audiences are looking for. And we've had this conversation with you many times before, because you are literally on a university campus. Your audience is the sort of audience that comes to these movies often, and you have a really good track record with us of pointing out things that are going to be huge at the box office before anyone else does. That doesn't mean huge in terms of box office numbers all the time, but just in terms of over performances, you have a really good read on what's going to perform. So let's go into, I guess, presentation by presentation from CinemaCon, your own highlights. But before we do, Alex, let's start with a studio that didn't present, but is opening a really big movie this weekend. And in our forecasting panel, as we went over in our news segment, we've been getting numbers all over the place. Some people are giving me numbers of opening weekends as low as 50 million. Some people are giving me opening weekends above 80 million. The truth is probably going to be somewhere in between, but that's a big range. With you and the people of this younger generation, where do you think Michael is going to land with your prime demographic?
I actually think it's going to hit on the higher end of expectations this weekend. I was looking forward to seeing when I got back, like how your ticket sales picking up as we get closer to release date. Not every movie is a big advance sale movie. If it doesn't lean into PLS, if it's not a spoiler type movie, no one cares about Michael's spoilers. You don't have to see it opening night. Then you really look to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night as the drivers and ticket sales. And starting Sunday, it started to really move here a little bit. Then I was talking to other exhibitors saying, hey, how's it looking? And everybody's picking up steam as we go. If that leads into big walk-ups over the weekend, then I think it's going to be closer. I know what Straight Outta Compton has the record for biopics, right? For musical, I think at 60 mil. I think we're going to clear that. I think this is going to break the record this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, we've been hearing that it's heavy on the concert footage, and that's exactly the crowd-pleasing sort of element that's going to drive buzz, drive word of mouth.
This is the movie where the cinema score is so important more than any other thing. Like, if it hits an A on Saturday, you know it's going to have a great one, just like Bohemian did. Like, I think Elvis hit that too. So, if it's well received by audiences, that's who it's made for. So, looking forward to see the reaction to it.
I think a lot of folks, and you're right, by the way, I think, Alex, because a lot of folks, when it comes to Michael Jackson, we love his music, but we might have reservations about sitting through his life stories because there's a lot of directions that can take. And while some stories are important to tell, if you're paying money to spend 2 hours to watch a movie purely for entertainment value, as I assume is the case for Michael ticket buyers, for a mass audience, I can understand folks holding back and saying, well, is this the movie for me? And like you said, the word of mouth here, the cinema score is going to be crucial. Are the people that bought tickets for opening weekend getting what they paid for? Is it meeting their expectations? Not is it a good movie? Not did it tell the whole story? Not is it a documentary? Is this the movie that I paid a ticket for? And we're going to find that out come Sunday. And so far, what you're saying is echoed by some folks in different key markets. There are markets where this movie just didn't pre-sell well, hasn't sold since. And there are other places like where you're at, like you mentioned, what's the spoiler here? Do I need to get a PLF ticket for this? Not really. And you're going to wait for that Monday through Wednesday on release week to make a decision. We look forward to see how that plays out. Of course, we have lots of other studios to go over here at CinemaCon 2026 and your own highlights of the event, the films that you think are going to hit with younger audiences. Let's start here with the Monday morning presentations. Some of the specialty players, some of the mid-major studios that participated at the event. Let's go over now to the Tuesday morning presentations. And before we get started with Neon, we got a quick glimpse of what G-Kids has up its sleeve with a new Godzilla title. Alex, this ended up being on top of Rebecca's radar as soon as she saw it. What can you tell me about this new film?
No, this is gonna be a big one. That's a movie where, I caught it, I want to say week 4 or 5 in its release cycle, because a movie that just built steam as it was being released. And then a movie that, in terms of, I always say sometimes streaming can help us. The movie exploded when it got home. Everybody saw it. They found it. Young folks saw it. Then it won the Oscar for visual effects. It was almost like everybody was rooting for that movie that night. If you remember when that telecast came. Yeah. And it's already, I've literally had students walk in here since January and say, are you playing Godzilla Minus Zero in November? Like on that day.
That's the title we're talking about. Yep. I omitted to say the name, but Godzilla Minus Zero is a title that would have been niche in many other years, but now it's firmly crossed into the mainstream. The Academy Awards was a massive boost, and it's great to hear that you already have 18 to 22-year-olds that might not be plugged into release dates going up to you in person and asking for
Yeah, well,
this film.
walking into the lab, several like different people not associated with each other. That is already a movie I can tell is going to be a big one on November 6th, I think, 6th or 8th.
You can definitely
And we
lean
meet-
into some creative lobby activations on that one.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You know, it's funny. I think with younger audiences, I genuinely think that franchise means a little bit more than the Warner Brothers one
Yes.
means at this point, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But the movies are better. I hate to say it, but the
Yeah.
movies are better.
Yeah. So apologies.
Yeah.
And
to
the
Warner Brothers.
subtitles aren't an issue. It really is to that point in
Yeah.
this generation. This is a generation that grew up with anime, where subtitles and dubs have a very specific cultural role, and this generation doesn't mind reading text on screen. Many times when you watch television these days, the way sound mixing works, you'll put the captions there anyway.
I have
to
subtitles if
understand
I'm
what's
watching
happening.
something in English. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and on the anime topic, just real quick, you know, when you see the report that came out in December, Cinema United put out, where Gen Z went to the movie 6.1 times a year and it was 4.6 the year before. You know, I always joke, I was like, oh, that's the Demon Slayer Chainsaw Man effect. You know, it's just two absolute gifts from the sky for me that just all of a sudden blockbusters in September and October. And then you couple it with Iron Lung and then maybe Backrooms coming soon. So it's the youth are going to be all right is the headline there.
They're going to keep on driving audiences to our theaters. And you mentioned A24 a little bit ago, and they can do no wrong with the younger generation. And I feel Neon's in the same spot. Maybe they lean a little bit more art house and a little bit more festival pickup, and they've got those Academy Award nominations and bona fides to back that up. But that Neon slate this year looks fantastic. I loved seeing them in the Coliseum. Of course, we're recording this before Cannes, where they're probably going to have a number of titles in contention. But what from that Neon slate do you think will hit with these younger viewers?
Well, you know, especially with when you talk about the festivals, you know, Neon picked up a Nora at one of those festivals, so it could, and that movie did great here. So there's a great chance that the next big Neon movie we don't even know about yet,
Right?
I think there's 6 consecutive Palme d'Or winners they've distributed at this point, looking to make it 7.
Yeah, certainly. When I look at what's coming up, I think I Love Boosters has a shot. You know, the Sorry to Bother You follow up. You know, I thought the clip was great. Everyone loves Keke Palmer. You know, she's a really nice draw. One of Them Days did really well here last year.
Was Boost Riley talking about people showing up in the maximalist monocolor outfits?
He did. And you know, I feel like he spoke just to me when Boots Riley, at the end of his presentation, wanted to add it that he's taking it to all college towns because it's a college movie, you know? So
That's crucial. That's crucial. And I look at something like Sorry to Bother You, and that's the sort of movie that would get play at college campuses when I was in college, right? That's a sort of weird, out of left field amusement park ride, as Boots Riley described his films. And I agree. I think going with a college campus tour for I Love Boosters is going to be important. It's not going to break box office records. It doesn't have to. It has to cause that inflection point. Like you mentioned a second ago, Alex, if you can take a younger viewer and turn 4 visits to the cinema per year to 6, there's an incremental benefit to all of us. And these are the sort of movies, you mentioned Godzilla in early November when we need something badly. That's not the only movie that's coming out here. The trailer for Hokum, talk about a movie that just really, really increased its visibility for me because I love folk horror. And Adam Scott, the star, is riding a great wave of positive reactions after his performance in Severance, the Apple TV streaming series. Do you think that might have a nice niche audience with your viewers?
the great thing about Neon movies is that if you're a week late, you're fine, you know, because they play forever.
They have long legs, you could say.
Yeah. And I see what you're doing.
Come on.
Yeah, you know. Oh, that franchise got sniped last week. But with Hokum, potentially, you know, you wonder. For me, it's always like, because I've got 3 screens, I got to choose between that and Prada. I'll probably go Prada. That would mean, you know, May 15th week, which is wide open. That'd be a great week to open it. By then, I'll know how the movie's doing. And then it's just like Ken Adam Scott. You know, sometimes these stars of big streaming shows don't necessarily carry the freight on an opening weekend, you know?
Right.
Like just because he's huge in Severance doesn't mean Hokum's going to connect. Hopeful for it, but, you know, wait and see. You got to wait and see on that one.
And now let's move over to Sony because the most viewed trailer of all time had interesting footage come out during that presentation. And we also got a little bit more detail on what's going to happen to the Spider-Verse What's the role that Spider-Man is going to have on your campus?
Oh, it's going to be huge. And just a thing of beauty to have it in August. Like, I know it's July 31 is the release date, but how great is it to have 1.4, 1.5 billions where the gross of that movie starts, and it's going to be in August. And it's just wonderful for us. Carries you right into Labor Day. No Way Home was massive here. No Way Home still has a huge impact. If I bring that movie up, folks light up. I love the clip that they showed in terms that it was just like a kid in college. That's why Spider-Man's great. If they went bigger than No Way Home, I'd be a little worried in terms of marketing because there's nowhere to really go in terms of size and scope. But going smaller and then leaving things for a surprise is a great way to market the movie. The clip, like I said, the clip was great. Tom Holland is so perfectly cast in that role. The franchise works. I would be stunned if we're looking up at the end of 26 and that's not the number one movie of the year. I'd be very surprised.
It's definitely, I think, on the radar for a lot of folks. And in terms of Spider-Verse, it seems like we've been waiting a lot between installments. I know they're tough to make, but Lord and Miller went on stage to show us some footage. Do you think that can retain its core audience after all these years?
Oh, yeah, big time. Big time. I mean, when you hit the marketing of it and you hit early June 2027, that movie's going to be big on everybody's radar. Both those movies are well received. The only real misstep in that franchise isn't necessarily the gap. It's just that they announced the movie to come out 8 months later.
Yeah.
They didn't even
right
write
away.
yet.
It was very clear that was not going to happen.
Yeah, but the marketing, you're going to get the core back from the first movie. It ended on quite a cliffhanger after the second movie. And like I said, both movies are so well received that movie, the slam dunk, that movie's going to work well next year. And it's the one big mainstream franchise that was a little early on implementing anime tactics into it.
Mm-hmm.
So young folks love it. They love the different animation styles and all that. And that movie was ahead of its time a little bit because I think the first one was 2019, 2018. So that one was pretty early, a couple years early in how they made it, and it really worked.
Sony went big into the various video game adaptations. I think neither Daniel nor myself are really gamers. Obviously, among Gen Z in particular, that's huge. With the Zach Krieger trilogy for Resident Evil, Bloodborne. What's the buzz you're hearing on some of these video game adaptations that people are excited to see?
Well, the one that I had started, especially since it's 3 weeks into the college semester, so this is just personally, Resident Evil's so important for my slate. It's the same week I think as Demon Slayer was last year, but if they could just legally call it Resident Evil : from the weapons guy, their goal,
right.
The
weapons
just
should be bigger on the poster than Resident Evil.
And I thought it was so funny when the trailer was basically just like, this is from the weapons guy over and over, and it's like perfect.
Weapons guy presents Resident Evil.
Yeah, exactly, because that is just that's box office. That's great. I have no doubt it's going to be a great movie. So Krieger making Resident Evil for me in third week of September. I mean, if that lands, it plays all through October for you, right? Because you got till November 1st when horror movies kind of expire. So I'm really excited for that one. And I hear it's like a 95-minute.
Oh, yes.
Really intense go. Yeah, I hear it's not like a super long movie.
Sold.
You bought Rebecca and I over with 95 minutes. That sounds wonderful.
I heard it's a very intense, following one guy through this 90-minute journey that's pretty crazy. So it should be fun.
And there's, I think, a big crossover appeal here that maybe Demon Slayer didn't have. There was no way that Demon Slayer would find an audience beyond the anime fandom. I think that it's hard for something like that to cross over. Yeah. But when you have a director of a film like Weapons, regular movie fans like Rebecca and myself are going to go and pay for a ticket of something we would never see from an IP that doesn't really jump out at us, mostly because the director's there. We're going to give it a shot. So I think there's great upside there from Weapons. Now, the Cargo Shorts contingency at Press Row at CinemaCon was very loud, whooping and hollering, as they often do, about some of these other video game adaptations were announced. We know none of them. We know Zelda. So can you go over which ones we really have to look at as real potentials to make an impact in the market?
The first thing any staff member asked me about was they said, hey, what'd they show from Bloodborne? We heard there was a Bloodborne movie coming out.
There you go.
And I told them, I was like, I think it was just an announcement. Then they showed a couple slides. It'll be R-rated. It'll be animated. And that's kind of what they got. I anticipate they're going to put a little bit of their their anime like Spider-Verse style into it. You know, it really syncs up well to that. And that's going to be big. I don't think they didn't date it, did they? I don't think they dated it, but I think 28 is all they kind of said. In terms of the industry, whatever we may have slowed down with the MCU, because the MCU is still big. We'll get to them. That ain't going anywhere. But we've definitely picked up in the video game world that wasn't there 10 years ago.
It's wild that video games were cursed for so long.
In the same way comic book movies were cursed in the 80s,
Exactly.
right? It takes time sometimes. You need the fans who grew up with it to become filmmakers, and then all of a sudden it works out, you know? So we're kind of hitting that now.
I was a bit disappointed we didn't get anything from Zelda. I think there's a massive fandom there, but maybe just it's a little early to launch that campaign.
Maybe they're just waiting. They're waiting for Comic-Con, maybe? I mean...
Yeah, probably. You know,
I figured the only reason could be, I mean, that's a live action. They shot it outside and it's so effects heavy. Maybe the effects just are so, and if it doesn't look right the first time they show it to the public,
you'll hear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So you may want to protect that first look a little bit and just really make sure. And I'm sure when Spider-Man Brand New Day comes out, that's the attached trailer. I'd be stunned if it isn't. So that's a perfect timing.
Absolutely. I think there's big anticipation for a title like that. Other than that, from Sony, what else sort of jumped out at you?
Jumanji 3 is in a little bit of a pickle because you've got two massive movies coming out 7 days before, and then you hit Christmas Day, and, you know, it's going to be tough. But I did like what I saw from Jumanji 3. Certainly, you're going to get the full might of Sony's marketing behind it. I think the approach they're taking is good. Like, it feels like a bigger version of the second movie, which is what you want. And I think that, you know, when it moved off December 11th to Christmas Day, you know, my immediate concern was, oh man, it's going to be tough to fit all these movies.
I mean, if you're for a theater with three screens, I mean...
Yeah, well, that was it. It was like, am I keeping Avengers on 2 through Christmas, or am I doing Jumanji? And I'm doing Jumanji. Like, they convinced me it's going to be big with the families. It reminded me a little bit of how all the first 2 movies played here, you know, so it'll do well.
This Christmas has so many different movies competing for the moviegoer's dollar. You've got, obviously, on December 18th, Avengers Doomsday and Dune Part 3 coming out. Then on the 23rd, The Angry Birds Movie 3 for much younger audiences. Jumanji Open World on Christmas Day, along with Werewolf, the new Robert Eggers horror title. And then you've got, for slightly older folks from Paramount, Mr. Irrelevant, the John Tuggle story. It's a really competitive slate that I think has a lot of playability going into January, where, by the way, Children of Blood and Bone is going to play a role. We'll go into that when we get into the Paramount part of the presentation. But now let's move on to the Warner Brothers presentation, because this is a studio that has a lot of movies in the pipeline, and it's going to be hard to pick and choose. But let's start with the DC Comics of it all. We got an early look at Supergirl. We got an early look at Clayface, movies that seem to be very different from one another. Is the audience going to be there for Supergirl in the same numbers that it was for the Superman film last summer?
I don't know if Supergirl's got 700 mil in it. You know, that's what Superman made, you know, and you had James Gunn behind it. Superman was, in the last calendar year, it wound up being my number 2 movie on the year. It did great here.
Really?
Like, folks loved
that's
it.
great to hear.
Yeah, so folks loved it.
And that's a summer title, of course.
Yeah, in my off season. I mean, it did great.
It's your off season, exactly. Yeah. That's great to hear.
Yeah, and it did really well. So obviously, I'm playing Supergirl. I don't think WB or the DCU needs it to perform like Superman. And in terms of us, I look at Supergirl inside of this amazing 5-week stretch, which is when it starts with Toy Story. You have Toy Story, Supergirl, Minions, Moana, Odyssey, 5 in a row. And it's just great right in there. It'll give you a good weekend no matter what. And for exhibitors, I think it'll definitely connect. Clayface, the other end of the spectrum, very excited for Clayface. So Clayface coming out late October, pure body horror movie. To me, it's just replacing, like, if you take out a big Blumhouse movie like Black Phone and you plug in Clayface there, awesome. Can open to the same, if not maybe even a little bit more. It's got DCU behind it, and it can perform great for you, you know? And then that gets you right into November, which we've already talked could be pretty big. But I really like the release date of Clayface. October's pretty strong this year compared to last year, I thought.
Yeah, compared to last year.
I need to hear that.
I know.
I need to hear that. Now, honestly, my biggest concern this year, and the whole reason why I'm not joining the chorus of saying it's a $9.9 billion year, is September and it's October. I think November after CinemaCon, I feel a lot more confident. Obviously, Spider-Man is going to drive sales through August. We'll be fine. It's going to be, slimming returns the deeper you get into that. But September and October, I'm worried about. So it's great to hear that those months are fine. Now, not a Warner Brothers title, but I don't want to forget putting this movie as part of the conversation. I had Shauna Miller from Fathom Entertainment on my panel at CinemaCon on Monday morning, and she told me that her pre-sales in June, which is the month that Supergirl is going to come out, for the amazing digital circus, The Last Act, those pre-sales are through the roof.
Yeah.
They're doing fantastically well.
Yeah, I know what our VP of sales, Patricia, her son is our quote-unquote Gen Z whisperer. Are you hearing anything about this title based on a very popular web series? I mean,
oh yeah, for sure. It actually skews a little younger than my folks. So a lot of so a lot of my folks here are going, oh yeah, that's for the younger kids. So it's not necessarily at least in small anecdotal always when I say something.
Right.
Yeah. But they've said, oh yeah, that it's a little behind or a little after where they were. It skews a little bit younger, but the sales are incredible. Everyone I've talked to that's playing that thing is so excited about what it's got coming and what it's got going on. We're playing it, going to give it a shot. I'm excited for it, so, excited to see what it can do.
Cycle is open. The bookings are open for this title that's getting a lot of momentum. That's going to be hitting your theaters in June, where we said it's going to be a competitive window there. You've got Supergirl playing an important role. You've got a number of other films from the studio slate competing in June. But let's talk a little bit more on the other Warner Brothers films. What stood out from you from this presentation?
It wasn't just me. It was all the other exhibitors about, where's the Batman 2? We really hope it makes October next year.
Yes.
The concern comes from a good place because we want it so bad. It's going to be so big. And if it does stick to October 3rd, which I think it is, what a gift. I mean, what a great, great release date for that movie. So, we'll see what happens to it. And then, obviously, you can't talk about Warner Brothers' presentation without the final 10 minutes or so when Dune decided to show up and just sort of drop that gauntlet down with that 7-minute scene it showed, which was incredible. And then
it looked great. We saw the first 7 minutes of Dune Part 3, and I came out completely wowed. That's, as I understand it, that's a tougher book to adapt. That gets a little bit, more mystical to say.
I know that at one point someone turns into a worm man. It seems like it is more fan-oriented. I'm sure it seems just like it's going to take some more liberties with the property, but we'll see how it does up against Doomsday.
Let's talk about that because again, you've got 3 screens. We just talked about Jumanji. You're putting that in one screen. You've got your other 2 screens booked. Condolences to Werewolf from Robert Eggers because it's really tough to see where you slot everything in.
Yeah. I mean, not many exhibitors are necessarily happy about this showdown. I think it's not necessarily because of either of those 2 movies. I think we all know it's because, no offense, there is a made-for-TV Chronicles of Narnia taking up IMAX screens during Thanksgiving week. Normal theater, I can't even play, not even available to me, And because of that, Dune or Doomsday, the only real thing about the showdown, neither one's going to hit its ceiling. It just won't. It's not going to happen. Like they can both do well, and we can all do well with it, but not as well as we could have if they were maybe spaced out a little bit. And is what it is. Can't control it. Both movies were very, very clear that they are not moving.
You're right, because those PLFs are going to be spoken for a while, and it's not a coincidence, as we said on our podcast, that Disney missed out on the Thanksgiving corridor with Hexed on IMAX screens because the made-for-TV Narnia movie is going to be playing. Then IMAX already announced we're going to prioritize Dune Part 3 for that opening weekend. And all of a sudden, we hear about something called Infinity Vision that is very vague and doesn't really tell you much about anything other than implying selective marketing for certain screens that is more or less arbitrarily going to be decided by Disney. I'm concerned about this thing.
I'm all about studios and distributors and their marketing becoming less PLF reliant anyway. 81% of screens aren't PLF. That's the way most Americans see movies every weekend. These numbers tell you, even though Project Hail Mary hit 45%, which is an astronomical number for PLFs, that still means more than half of people saw it in their normal 2D house locally. you know?
Mhm.
And that's
We have to
Project
do
Hail
a better
Mary.
job
Yeah.
at that.
Yeah.
We have to focus on that messaging.
If you don't have a PLF, you're playing a movie a day late now because all these PLF show movies on Wednesdays. You know, they get these Wednesday night fan event screenings under the guise of a PLF. So, and now PLFs have basically caused this showdown on the 18th. Very interesting just from a following the business perspective to see this. Because if you thought Disney was moving, they literally ended CinemaCon on a countdown clock as you walked out.
Yeah.
You know,
They're not. They're not moving.
no,
They're not
no,
budging from
no,
this.
they're not
And
moving.
this-
Dune's not moving. So here we go.
We'll see how it ends up. I agree with you, but I can't wait to see Dune Part 3.
Yeah.
I'm very excited. I'm sure both movies are going to do well in the marketplace. It'd be great if we had one of them in a weaker period of the schedule to sort of help bump up grosses. You still have to staff, Alex. You still
No.
have to make sure
Well, I
that you have
had-
a consistent admittance all year.
So I had Avengers Endgame 24 hours here on all 3 screens. And I sold out
Wow.
everything. I mean, that thing sold out a 4 a.m. show, a 5:30 a.m. show. It didn't matter. Like, it just sold out all 3 screens from, if you walked into my theater Thursday at noon, they said, hey, I want a ticket to Avengers Endgame. I said, I got one on Tuesday for you if you want to come back on Tuesday. Like, that's how crazy it was. So the idea that I'm not 3 screening Doomsday, which I'm not, I'll 2 screen it and I'll 1 screen Dune. But still, it's gonna be tough. You know, you gotta
It's
navigate your
competitive.
way. And then, and again, neither movie, just very small, and it will hit what they could have if they were on their own for a weekend. You know, it's just a fact.
Yeah, because of these reasons. It's unfortunate, but, we don't make these decisions. People with different priorities than ours end up making these calls. Let's look at everything else here on the Warner Brothers side. Anything else that jumped out at you before we go into the next studio presentation?
Mortal Kombat 2, I think, is going to have a nice little number. You know, I think it'll open
Yes.
pretty well in a few weeks. Carl Urban, I always look at who do you cast that gives you a little bit of added value, and I think he's a great value player there.
Yeah.
He doesn't work in every movie, but as Johnny Cage, that was a smart move.
He
Kudos
did
to that
the-
casting director. That was a good
He
move.
was the rebooted Judge Dredd. I mean, he was so good in that one.
Yeah,
I
and
have to defend the rebooted Judge
It's
Dredd
good.
as one
It's a
of the
good
best
movie.
remakes of all time.
Oh, hey, the
It's
best
not only
three-
good,
the
it's
best
great.
the best 3D you'll see outside of an Avatar movie. The 3D was incredible when you saw it. Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah.
I'm a huge fan of that Dredd remake. Should have found a bigger audience upon release.
Oh,
So
nice.
yes, my hat's off to Mr. Carl Urban. Let's move now over to Universal and Focus Features because they had another long presentation. You had the wonderful opportunity of seeing both Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg share the same stage. Let's talk these movies, Alex. What does Universal have in store for your audiences?
I mean, the Odyssey, that's a no-doubter. I think Oppenheimer really played well to the young folks. They loved it.
And that's a movie about science, by the way.
Yeah.
Oppenheimer is literally a movie about a bunch of scientists
It's
in
a movie
room
about
talking.
boomers ruining the world.
Yeah.
And now you have the opportunity of seeing one of the most cinematic adaptations that you could think of in terms of book to screen. I can't wait to see it. I'm sure your students can't wait to not have to rely on ChatGPT for their literature class or their classics courses. They'll be able to have a good reference on screen.
You've got Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson in it. And they're, that's huge for young audiences seeing the movie. Gonna be a huge movie. If you want to squint and find something wrong with it, it's not going to appeal to many folks under the age of 12. I don't know if a lot of kids are going to watch that movie, but they'll have Moana next door. They'll be fine.
To be fair, I don't think too many under 12-year-olds showed up to Oppenheimer on opening day.
That's fair. Very fair point. Very fair point.
They sat through Barbie.
There was a joke made at the panel at CinemaCon how all Nolan movies come out on the same weekend, but it works for a reason because the whole summer slate comes by and everything's kind of one tone, and then Nolan comes with a completely more serious and hey, let's lock in tone, and it's great.
Right.
And this movie's the same thing. So even if it does skew a little darker or more serious, I think it's only going to help it because you're basically counter-programming the 7 weeks of movies that came before, like his movies normally do.
Minions and monsters.
Is that going to create another headache for you guys? The Gentle Minions thing? Are they coming back or is that done?
You never know. You're just a Reddit thread away. That was a very organic, just happy accident that happened during the release, just like Chicken Jockey.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew?
You can't engineer that sort of thing.
Who knew that 6 days in the Minecraft run, it was going to have a completely second different kind of run, just because a video goes viral on TikTok. So you never know. I do think in terms of, that group that did that with the last minute, they've aged out. They're not going to do that again.
I was going to say,
they're 26 now, so.
They're working jobs. The Gentle Minions troublemakers, you hired them already at your companies.
Gentle Minions generation
mortgages.
too.
Yeah, but the movie itself will be huge. I mean, there's no doubt Minions is going to play all through July.
Now, one of the I'm curious as to your opinion on the Fokker-in-law or Fokker-in-law, depending on how you hyphenate it. Is that something that's because it seems like they're leading very, very hard on it with that ambitious Thanksgiving release corridor?
I was at middle school when the first one came out, guys. Middle school.
So it speaks before. When I said Carl Urban is a great value play, I cannot tell you what a good added value play Ariana Grande in that movie is. She turns them out. There are people who only saw Wicked for her that are here. She's huge with young audiences. This is really going to test her because I think some of this opening is going to fall on her because they haven't been able to get the movie greenlit and I think it's because of her involvement that it's a go. So I
absolutely agree with you. This is Ariana's movie, 100%.
Yeah, she'll be on all the posters. Like it looks like she's getting all the big comedy set gags in the movie. I mean, it's a showcase for her. I think she's up to it. I think she'll bring them out. I think because of her, it will appeal more than in a way. Like if she wasn't in it, I might not even play it, But since she is in it,
I wouldn't exist. I don't think it exists without her. I genuinely think the only reason we have that is because Ariana is the type of new star in terms of film. She's already an established pop star that can maybe build audiences and revive something. I think it's a really good move for her. And she's not doing a romantic comedy. She's doing a comedy. Yeah. She's going for a genre that has struggled at the box office. This is going to be a big litmus test for the industry and the entire genre.
Yeah, it's funny because can comedy exist outside of the big Marvel movies, Deadpool's a comedy. People like laughing in the theater together. They just don't necessarily being sold only that. That can't necessarily be the draw, but we haven't gotten a Scary Movie 6 yet, right? So we'll see. There's another one coming that'll test it out.
We'll get to that soon enough, absolutely. But I do want to talk before the obvious transition from Scary Movie 6 is Steven Spielberg. Disclosure Day, we got to see maybe some of the best footage at CinemaCon that we saw all week. A lot of questions answered with the new trailer. We don't want to spoil too much. We want to make sure that the Universal's marketing campaign rolls out the way it's intended to. But how do you feel about an original, a sci-fi original, coming out in the middle of the summer from a director like this? Does he still have that same hold with younger audiences that he once had?
The truth is, I don't know. But I'm playing the movie because there's no movie where Steven Spielberg's on a poster that isn't getting played at a theater I operate. He's the reason I'm in the business. I cannot express how cool it was to be in a room with it. I know the Coliseum's a big room, but I was in a room with him, and I count. I count it.
Still counts. Someone breaks wind, we all smell it, so it counts.
So I was more optimistic because I'm happy that they acknowledged from the ground up that it was an abstract marketing campaign built around mystery, which is hard to sell.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
It's got its weekend to itself, but especially, and they're already showing 2 of the money shots we got last week online, which is great. But if they can lean a bit more into the theatricalness of it, the high stakes of it, even if you don't show anything from the third act, show the excitement that's in store. When Coleman Domingo said on stage, he said, what you're going to need for this movie is seatbelts. I thought, man, there hasn't been anything from the marketing campaign that makes you think that.
It does make me wonder, it's going to be you got to see it on the opening weekend to avoid spoilers. And I wonder how it's going to hold, leaning so hard into that mystery concept.
Yeah, and look, if it's great, the great thing about today's day and age, if it pops a 97 on Rotten Tomatoes the Monday it comes out and all the buzz is good, everyone's going to see it. The word gets out quick on great movies. Why couldn't Steven Spielberg make a great Alien movie? Of course he can. So the reasons to be optimistic, but I was going into it, that was the movie I might have been the most worried about, but I came out of it encouraged that they acknowledged that the marketing campaign was a little drenched in mystery on purpose. I think in the 10 10 to 14 days before, they're going to really pivot it a little bit and get people out.
I think so too. And we need something like that from Spielberg. I get it if he wants to go to smaller projects. I respect it. That's fine. I thought his West Side Story remake was great. I think
It's
it's
so
a really
good.
difficult source material and elevated it. But it's not, we all knew that wasn't going to be a record-breaking movie. And The Fabelmans, a little too indulgent for my taste. That was one for him. Okay, that's fine. We haven't had a big swing summer movie from this director since Ready Player One in 2018.
Yeah, been a long time. It really, just with that movie, I don't know how you say anything besides what every exhibitor is going to say, which is, I'm going to play it and I hope it's great and I hope it connects.
Sign me
And
up.
you know, 7 days later, you got a slam dunk Toy Story, so it's okay. So I think
Right.
we're all kind of just saying, I hope it lands, I think is where we're at with that.
Well, let's move on now to the Focus Features part of the slate. I know it's a really competitive Christmas corridor for you, but Robert Eggers has built a career on the sort of horror movies that aren't made for white audiences, that are custom built for, let's say, niche audiences and modest box office results. Now, that's been shaken up a little bit. The Northman had a high budget and it did okay at the box office, but Nosferatu, did anybody in this universe think Nosferatu as a Christmas release a couple of years back would be $100 million earner? Frankly, I don't know if it got there or not, but if it didn't, it got damn close to it. Can we expect some of the same from Werewolf with such a competitive slate behind it? Because when Nosferatu came out, there wasn't a Dune right there taking up those screens.
Yeah.
There wasn't an
It was
Avengers taking up those
Process
screens.
of elimination. It was what you saw on Christmas because you always see a movie on Christmas.
And in terms of the Venn diagram of movie viewers, Dune 3 and Werewolf is a circle. There's no. Then
Yeah.
that's the exact same way more than Doomsday is. So
Right.
I think it could do it. I opened Nosferatu on Martin Luther King weekend. I opened it 3 weeks later because it still did great. It still did awesome when I opened
Yes.
and it lasted through Valentine's Day.
Is it an opening day play for you when it's so competitive to have one of your screens? No, but that doesn't mean there isn't space for it come January. And I love that idea. If you've got a limited number of screens, Martin Luther King Jr. weekend is right there. Your classes are in session.
Yeah.
That's a great January, New Jersey. Not much to do outside. That's a great
Yep.
horror movie weekend
Yep.
for you to enjoy. Let's move over now to the next presentation here from the studio side, which was the Amazon MGM slate. Now, in my opinion, this was my favorite presentation of the whole week. I thought they did a fantastic job. A lot of movies here, not too many established franchises. So what really jumped out at you, Alex, after that great performance that Project Hail Mary had earlier this year?
Oh, but what they opened with. Michael B. Jordan's follow-up, Thomas Crown Affair. It's
Yeah.
When I was younger, I had no interest in that movie. The Pierce Brosnan one, because I remember, I think I was 13, 12 when it came out. This is going to appeal to folks, because I think with Michael B. Jordan following Sinners with this, he directed the Creed movie. It just looks so entertaining, an art heist movie. And I think what we saw with Hail Mary is when Amazon really puts their marketing might behind something, they can get it going. Which is what I was, more than anything, I was excited about with Hail Mary was the 2 weeks before. Because, man, what a marketing job they did with that movie. My fiance was getting boxes delivered and it was Hail Mary boxes. It was great. Every apartment in America. So I mean, really excited by that. The footage I thought looked awesome. I think Michael B. Jordan is having a moment. So you want to have his next movie and they've got it. So it begins to me, and 2 years in a row where they opened up with a surprise kind of, oh, this looks great movie with their presentation. But I thought Thomas Crown Affair really is something to be excited about next spring.
Now, Masters of the
fantastic.
Universe, what are you? Because that's one where I went into that presentation. That was never really a thing for me, but it looked fun. It looked stupid in a very good way.
I promise you this: they're not going to mention who's playing Skeletor, are they?
Yeah.
Movie. I think it's going to do better than folks think. I do a lot of box office drafts and all that stuff, and people think it's not going to bomb. I'm telling you, it's not. Amazon's got too much marketing behind it. Enough people, I think. Remember that Netflix animated show Kevin Smith did was a big hit when it came out 3 years ago. I'm not saying it's enough to move the needle and get people out. But certainly, it's in a good weekend. Scary Movie's not a competitor. Week 2 of Backrooms isn't really going to scare it off. So it's got that little market to itself. because that's 14 days after Mandalorian and Grogu, which is probably what the same audience is. So, and it's, kids are starting to get out of school in parts of the country in early June. Yeah. So I think it's going to do better than people think. I don't know if it's a $50 million opener. I think it's going to do enough to get people through that weekend, especially combined with Scary Movie 6, which is the same weekend, and you have 2.
Yeah, I think Scary Movie wins that weekend. We'll go into that shortly. Yeah. But I think Masters, like you, doesn't have to be a $50 million opener.
No.
What else from this Amazon MGM presentation really stood out for you?
Your Mother was Amazon MGM, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The Mahershala Ali movie. He's got pulled only because it brings me back. I was the first Jersey movie theater to play Moonlight a decade ago. So anytime Mahershala is in a movie, my antenna goes up a little bit because it reminds me of that. So I thought that trailer looked great for sure. I wonder about Highlander. Can Highlander? If I say the word Highlander to my staff, their eyes are gonna cross and they're just gonna glaze over. But with the might of Amazon behind it and a year out, can they make that a thing? Because it is a cool story that has a lot of commonality with a Mortal Kombat, a Street Fighter, or an MCU movie. It's a lot, or obviously it's John Wick doing Highlander. You saw the footage.
That's how you market it.
So
that's how you market it. John Wick guy presents Highlander.
Yeah.
You have to lean in on the John Wick. Highlander as an IP is stuck in the 80s.
Yeah.
It makes sense for me. It makes sense for you.
80s, 90s goth revival. I mean, we've seen it not work with the Crow remake, but Amazon definitely has a lot more money to throw around on marketing than Lionsgate on that one.
Yeah, like when I think Amazon MGM with any projects right now, I just think if they have a lot on the line, I think they can deliver a weekend for most movies because their marketing is so good. It really is. They have a lot of power behind it.
We've seen hits and misses from them even earlier this year. Mercy didn't work out great, but did the AI Judge movie have a lot riding on it? No.
that was their test balloon to make sure they had the kinks worked out. I mean,
I agree with you. They that's the canary in the coal mine. And then they overperformed something small with a very targeted audience like Melania. Having that movie work wasn't easy. They made it work. They had that overperform. And then we know what happened with Project Hail Mary. I think they've got something very compelling going on. And the next 2 titles I want to talk about here are Verity, the Colleen Hoover adaptation. I think there might be something there. I'd love to hear your insights on that, Alex. And then finally, Spaceballs, the new one, which for me was the big highlight of the entire event.
So Verity, I'm playing automatic. So, Verity's one, I just know on October 2nd, that's the movie I'm going with, Sorry, Digger. I got to go with Verity. I only have so many screens, But, that is basically, there's 2 different kinds of Colleen Hoover stories and books and movies and all that. But when it gets a little sinister, a little mean, and a little twisty, that's when the box office pops off. And that's
a date movie.
The other one's a good
for sure.
That's a date movie one.
Yeah. So now when it gets to this, I think this is like the true follow-up for her, in terms of box office and doing well. Yeah. And I just think I think that weekend's going to be big. I think the trailer's great. The cast is great. The story looks insane. So that's a perfect movie for that time of year.
And how about Spaceballs? Because this is a movie that I grew up on. I'm sure everyone here grew up on.
It means a lot to me. It means a lot to us. I don't know. When I mentioned it to my staff when I came home, they have no clue what it is. So they've got a lift to do to get Gen Z out. That movie doesn't need Gen Z to show up,
No, it doesn't.
That needs us to show up,
It needs us to show up. And by the way, I think Scary Movie is going to help bring organically the excitement around a new spoof. And the way that Scary Movie is currently tracking, I think there's going to be a nice organic push for Spaceballs getting a wider audience by the time that hits screens.
There are 2 trailers that I love watching with the crowd. One of them was Passenger because the jump scare at the end was so fun that it always gets everybody. And the other one was Scary Movie 6 because that trailer, I've been playing it all spring. Just plays like gangbusters in a crowd. They're laughing, they're loving it. I think it'll be great. It's been so long since one of those movies happened. We've had so many great horror franchises since the last Scary Movie. You see Terrifier and Smile and a million Conjuring movies. It's ripe to get taken down a little bit.
The Midsummer poster that just came out.
Oh yeah, that was great.
This new Scary Movie where the red eyes.
Yeah. I mean, if you look elevated horror, I don't think there's been a parody with movies like that. That's kind of been something that, like, the Ari Aster movies have come up since
There's
this
been a
franchise
little
dwindled
bit,
down.
a little bit of meta in the Scream reboots, but not really to the level that's fun.
Yeah, so
we're ready for it.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's going to do really well.
That's, I think, a big highlight from that Paramount presentation, and I want to talk more about that. But before we get specifically into that presentation, I do want to get your reaction as an exhibitor, not from a major chain, to David Ellison being there in person and his commitment to looking everyone in the eye and saying, "Hey, to give you my word, 30 movies per year between both divisions." I don't want to put you on the spot by asking you what you think about this. I do want to ask your reaction to having David Ellison open up the Paramount presentation and speaking to you directly. Did that make an impact with you at all, or did you kind of see that coming?
No, it didn't have much of an impact with me. I mean, everything about Warner Brothers getting bought is bad by anybody. I say Netflix was a nuclear bomb, and this is more of a hand grenade in your hand. It's still bad. Nobody wants it. We want Paramount to thrive and be successful on its own, and Warner Brothers to thrive and be successful on its own. I understand why he's saying it's going to be 30 movies. He wants the deal to happen, obviously.
Yeah.
But if Sarando said he was going to give us 45 days exclusivity. Do you guys believe that? The best case scenario for all exhibitors is that Warner Brothers exists on its own and that Paramount exists on its own, way bigger than anything I could control. I love Skydance. I was genuinely rooting for Skydance to be the one to get Paramount because I thought, those guys that's Tom Cruise's place. Like, yeah, let's do it,
That made a lot of sense. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, like, when that happened, but in terms of another mega merger, it's just hard to live through Fox and Disney and then see the next one happen and think you're going to have different results from the same thing.
Yeah.
No matter who buys an existing studio, it doesn't have to be Paramount and Warner Brothers. It can be Sony and Universal, if you want to bring that up. No matter how you add that up, it's an equation that doesn't end up benefiting the side of exhibition. So I appreciate that perspective and saying, like, hey, we're not here waving a flag left or right, but it's a sensitive time.
There's only like 4 or 5 megas. So you don't want to make that go down to 3 or 4. That's not going to be... Right. We're already having trouble filling a 52-week calendar. I'd borderline say we don't. I'd say movies have become a 36-week calendar now. There's so many weeks that they just don't try anymore because Fox doesn't exist, because other big ones don't exist. I hope Amazon MGM becomes one of them. But I kind of think it won't be losing Warner Brothers. It feels more like you lose Paramount outside of their big IPs. Because Warner Brothers, I think, will drive the decision-making with all the stuff that they have.
Yeah, something that I think we have to sort of balance as we look at the big picture here. But Paramount does have a number of new releases coming out. We spoke about Scary Movie 6 a second ago. What else from that presentation really stood out for you that you think will connect with younger viewers?
The closer is going to do really well. I can't wait to play it next January with Children of Blood and Bone. That one I think has a lot of potential.
That's early January 27th.
That's Martin Luther King weekend. Yeah, which is good. I'm not. Listen, I love the movie. I'm just not a Beekeeper House. It's just not going to. So I was happy to have Children of Blood and Bone that weekend. But certainly we'll see how Street Fighter does. I hard to get a feel on that movie. When I say the words, they get excited here. Like, a Street Fighter movie, yes, and it's Do
they know when it's coming out? Is there awareness of?
No, but they never know when anything's coming out. They find out the Monday before.
Now let's go over to Disney, because Disney had, I think, a very strong close to this presentation. Disney has been inconsistent with CinemaCon presentations. This was probably one of their best that I can remember. And boy, did they end in a high note. Before we get into the Avengers of it all, what was really, really interesting for you in that first half of the Disney presentation?
In the first, I mean, certainly, I think Moana's going to make $1 billion. I know there's people who are skeptical about it. I'm not skeptical about it.
You don't think it's too much Moana in too little time?
That's a lot of Moana.
Moana 2 made that much.
Whenever parents come in, and so we do little hand drawings on. I have paintable walls here. We have a little Moana painting. That's the one they all light up on. They're all like, Moana, what is it? And I say, it's a live action one. And then they go, oh, okay. And then I say, so the Lin-Manuel songs will be back. So you guys will, and then they all light up. Yeah. So I think the movie's going to be big.
I mean, the actress playing was 17, so the movie came out. So this was, she saw the movie in theaters when she was a kid. It's kind of feels like that.
Yep.
Minions, Gentle Minions situation where people who grew up with it it's just timed perfectly.
I think this is kind of a test pilot for them because I think if it hits, you're going to see a live action Frozen in 36 months. Because I think they're testing the water. It's like, hey, can you make a live action movie of a real recent one and it connect? Because if it
live action Frozen is just a behemoth.
Yeah.
That just steamrolls anything in its path. I do want to talk about Toy Story 5 because I found that the footage made me feel a lot better about that movie than I did before.
Just worse about the state of parenting in the United States. It looks depressing.
But
that's in good Toy Story fashion.
No,
that's the whole point of them.
I think when I walked out of it, I always try to say what are the 3 biggest movies of the year, and I thought the biggest threat to Brand New Day would be Toy Story 5 walking out of it. Because those movies, that weekend works for Pixar, that movie works. Even what they showed that the Buzz Lightyear opening last year they showed us looked really good. All the buzz about the movie is that it's great. So a great Toy Story movie is going to be formidable, to deal with. No, I definitely think that movie's going to land. It's going to connect. Everyone here is excited about it. I play trailers on TVs. Whenever Woody and Buzz are up there, everybody looks up. They go, wait a minute, new Toy Story coming out? What? And, they get real excited in a way where, when Lightyear came out, I think it reminded people how much they like Toy Story movies, because they're like, oh no, we want Toy Story, and then now you're getting it. So Toy Story 5's out here. That's going to be a big one. The movie I have to ask you guys about, because I say it's the best smelling salt of a presentation thing that's ever been dropped. Tell me Whale didn't get you guys to the edge of your seat real quick,
Of course.
That's when I was telling people about that trailer. Like, you think it's going to be so goofy, it looks terrifying. I'm seeing it in immersive seating.
But it looks terrifying.
If there's any way to make that 9-minute sequence a 150-second trailer, they're golden.
It's the second coming of Crawl. And Crawl was a great movie.
Yeah, I mean, that trailer was so good. Scary, too. Really scary.
Well, that's what do you have to sell? Whalefall is a movie about a whale swallowing a person.
Yeah.
And the first question you ask yourself is, how is that going to look? And the answer to that question was revealed at CinemaCon, and it looks terrifying.
It looks absolutely people are going to start getting claustrophobia in the...
There is some ASMR effect in the audio mix that we heard from that sequence. While we talk about horror, I don't want to forget, I think a big potential here in terms of younger audiences, which is Backrooms, the A24 title that is maybe not your typical big IP franchise horror, definitely not the sort of Disney movie of these presentations, but Backrooms looks like the sort of title I want to see a million times more than something like the Mandalorian thing that's coming out the weekend prior.
Kids love liminal spaces.
Backrooms is definitely going to connect. That is, it's almost like professionally done Iron Lung, if that makes sense. So Iron Lung finished as my 8th best movie last year. Iron Lung just did amazing. Yeah, it did amazing here. It did so good. And again, what a gift. On January 3rd, I hadn't heard of it. And then on January 31st weekend comes and it's just smoking. So it's great. But this is in the same vein. This is based off, a YouTuber who basically played a game while people watched. But this is real actors, I was joking with my staff. Oh, everyone in this movie has a SAG card. That's exciting. So I think it's going to be big.
Exit 8 did as well as it has in limited release, not that long, in the last couple of weeks. Exit 8 being a similar sort of vibe makes me think that Backrooms has everything behind it to explode within this demographic.
Look, really, if you ever want to have confidence in it, Paramount moved Passenger up a week to get away from it, which is always the ultimate. So Paramount sees probably more than what we see, and they say, oh, we got to move. We got to get away from that movie. So that's a real encouraging sign.
I do want to close out this conversation by talking about the big fish in the pond, which is Avengers Doomsday. I don't think I've ever seen a trailer at CinemaCon shown twice. I might be mistaken. Maybe the Spider-Man thing when No Way Home.
I've never
debuted the trailer.
I've been to 7 CinemaCon, so I'm not a super vet, but I've never seen footage shown twice before.
I haven't either. I don't think.
But when Robert Downey Jr. tells you to play that trailer again, they ended on a strong note.
Yeah,
I am not excited about this, but I am clearly in the minority because they brought the house down at the Coliseum. And if you go on YouTube or on Twitter or on Instagram, and you just put the search term CinemaCon, this is what comes up.
Yeah.
They won the week with the footage reveal of this title. And the trailer, I don't know when they're going to debut it, but they did a really smart thing by giving us this glimpse. You have to think that this is going to be one of the biggest movies, not of this year, because it's coming out in December, but of next year. And next year is packed with major titles. How do you feel about Avengers Doomsday after what we saw?
I'm super excited for it. I mean, I grew up on all the Marvel stuff, so I can't wait for it. I know that what they have next year is one of the best comics ever written in Secret Wars. So I know that that's going to be amazing. So how do you get there? Because originally it was Kang Dynasty into Secret Wars. Now it's Doomsday into Secret Wars. So I'm excited to see how they get there. But you know what? My thoughts on the MCU, and still, like, Dune fans, avert your ears. A Captain America movie without Captain America opened to $88 million. Dune 2 opened to 80. The idea that
Dune 2 had Chalamet. And Chalamet is a brand of his own, right?
Yeah,
no, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Even a poor performing or a lower end performing Marvel title is still going to make your month. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, even Fantastic Four. No exhibitor is sad to have these movies in their theaters. Like, nobody, Right. And then when you think, I just remember that, like, my joke is always that Downey brought the moms with him, and we lost the moms when Downey left. And now Downey's back, he'll get the moms to come back, and then having Evans back and having Hemsworth. I just think people have spent 7 years missing these guys, saying like, oh, this is like anything else, like any big TV plot, you don't really love the world, you love the people in it, and then replacing it was hard. They caught an unbelievably unlucky break because they had the baton pass perfect, and then Chadwick, the tragedy happened. Because they had it. They had it ready. Like Black Panther, he was going to take it, and you can't control that. So the reasons that these things have been missteps aren't all in their control. But Doomsday to me is just I think it's gonna be big. I think it's not only will it be big, I think it'll finally fix this narrative issue that's going on with like so much of the online film community eye rolls at the MCU, but you see folks in public and they still like this stuff.
I mean, I roll at the MCU, and then I saw that trailer and I was like, wait, all right.
Yeah,
I'm kind of in.
And
I've been calling it that way for a while. This is the Marvel movie for people that stopped watching Marvel movies 3 years ago.
Black Panther 2 was solid. That's the recent one. I'll show
You'll
up.
give that one credit.
And look, remember that, and I don't know anything. I'm too low on the poll, but odds are very strong that the end of this movie is going to tease that Spider-Man and Deadpool are in Secret Wars. Coming next December. So it's only
great.
It's only gonna get bigger, because Secret Wars needs everybody.
They're gonna pop like three credit trailer segments in there.
Yeah. Don't leave
I'm
early.
gonna go see it. I'm gonna go see it. Honestly, I don't watch these things, and I'm going to go see it. And I can't say that about the last Avatar movie that played. I'm going to go. I'm going to pay my IMAX 3D ticket. I'm probably going to hate it, but it's on me because I know I've seen enough of these things to know I don't like them. But you don't want to be left out of the conversation. You don't want to be left out of where this industry is going. This is going to be a fantastic close to the year, and it was a great close to CinemaCon 2026. Alex, before we go, I have to ask you, in terms of like the entire show itself, inside and outside of the Coliseum, what was your biggest takeaway from the event?
It was the most optimistic CinemaCon I've ever been to. I mean, that's really, even talking to folks, there are times where, like, I've joked, there are years where the only optimism at CinemaCon is coming from the stage, and it's not from anyone sitting in the seats. Because you're even last year, that was the worst Q1 I think any of us had ever had. I mean, it was Minecraft ticket sales were going great through the week, which was the positive thing of last year's CinemaCon. But it was, but this year it was really that the slates are back, big movies are back. I was joking that I have to be a good GM again because I actually have choices for the first time since 2020. Where
it's not like let's play what they give us. You have to be strategic now.
Yeah, now it's like, oh, there's Werewolf and Street Fighter on the same day. I got to pick. It's like, oh, there's Verity and Digger. There's, different movies on different days, which is great. That's what you want because it means the slate's full and it's healthy again. But what I took away from it is that like it was the most positive folks had been about the industry going forward, minimum since 2020. But I think in 2019, we all kind of saw the streaming thing coming a little bit. And the fact that 45 days is everywhere now, like I keep thinking back to in 2021. Remember the big phrase, the ketchup will never go back in the bottle? Like they said it would only get
Yeah.
worse.
No,
Ketchup went back.
I was laughed at. Honestly, I kept on telling everyone, wait for the data to come out and we'll be right. At the end of the day, at the end of the year, at the end of the decade, we'll be right. I was laughed at, derided by so many different publications. I never let it go. What's up?
Ketchup went back in the bottle. Yeah, and
I mean,
none of them are calling you back, Daniel. Unbelievable.
But it made business sense that this model works. And you didn't need to convince exhibition. I think a lot of distributors knew, but you did have to convince maybe parent companies that are losing $500 million per quarter to get their butts kicked by Netflix on these streaming services no one watches, that are churning more than Amish are churning butter in Pennsylvania. I mean, these things that are total fiascos, you needed to let the dumpster fire burn and remind these executives all the way up top at these companies to not mess with us, because we work for you. Your cable companies are a mess. Figure that out. Your streaming thing is a dumpster fire. It's a money pit that you'll never recover from. Figure that out. This works. This works. And if you invest in us, you're going to have a viable business. So it just took a number of years to get there, but I think we're there now.
And I was screaming it back then. I was like, guys, I understand that the art houses are slow to come back. Maybe some of the platform releases aren't working. The younger folks are the first ones out. They want to go out. That's just a tale as old as time. And I just hope that no one ever thinks, because the TV's big at home, young folks want to watch it there. If anything, kids who've grown up with smartphones want to put them away way more than we do. You know, because we grew up without them.
So the data's there. The data's there. And whether you want to look at it or not, it's up to you. But it's a great interview that we do with Alex now annually. And I think we want to continue doing it because you give us great perspective on where this generation is. And it's not the same group of people. Like you said, the Gentle Minions generation, they're long gone. They graduated law school last year.
They have 401
They're starting their internships now. Well, thank you so much for your time, Alex. We really appreciated it. And we look forward to hearing more of your insights come next year.
Absolutely. It was great seeing you last week. Have a great one, guys.
Same here. And that was Alexander DelVecchio from the Rutgers Cinema going over highlights for the Gen Z crowd from the CinemaCon 2026 slate. To hear more from our CinemaCon coverage, don't forget to check out all the episodes that we put up online last week, where our entire team produced a series of daily episodes from Las Vegas. And we will talk to you again next week.